So a little bit of an introduction about myself. I grew up in Connecticut, played tennis from a pretty young age, was always pretty, I'd say, obsessed with the sport with the sport in many ways. Decided to play college tennis at Clark University up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
When I was there, I studied psychology. I started to recognize how important the mental side of the game was through reading some books, through my own experiences, through noticing that some of the players that had really nice strokes, really nice forehands, backhands, and serves didn't end up winning, and some of the players that maybe their strokes weren't as nice and ended up mentally figuring out how to stay calm, how to not get emotional or frustrated, how to keep their concentration, and ended up winning matches. So I became more and more interested in the field of sports psychology. Ended up doing a master's degree in sports psychology out in the West Coast at Cal State Long Beach. And then I've been coaching at different clubs. And then over the past 2 years, I've been at Sacred Heart University as the assistant men's and women's tennis coach there. And then about 8 months ago, I started Tiebreaker Psych LLC, which is a sports psychology coaching company where I work with a variety of athletes, including tennis players, um, on the mental side of the game, um, through introducing mental skills like visualization, imagery, goal setting, routines, mindfulness, meditation. So working on developing mental skills to help athletes perform better on the field or on the court. So
Well,
that's a little bit about me.
okay. Two things that you mentioned in there. One, I was a high school coach, and I had two players, a one and a two, and the one had beautiful strokes. And
Right.
two was learning, but the two ended up being a stronger player than the one, just like you said. There were things that he was able to figure out during the course of the match and not let get to him that the one unfortunately let get to him, so he ended up having to flip-flop him. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, as far as the psychology part of it, did starting the chess program, the game of chess and all that, did that feed into that as far as how you think through things, how you pay attention to things, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer those. So in terms of what you were saying with the number one and number two player, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of players, if they've had a lot of success growing up, maybe they were the best player in their area and they did a lot of winning, and maybe they haven't had to use the same types of mental skills,
Right.
and maybe they haven't had to go through the same type of adversity as another player, as a player who's maybe a little bit lower ranked. So sometimes when a player like that, who's always done a lot of winning and has always been one of the best players in the area, maybe gets to that next level. So maybe they make the jump from USTA tournaments to high school tennis, or from high school and USTA to college tennis, or any other jump. And then they see that next level. They're not quite equipped because they've been used to being really successful and they haven't had to maybe dig as deep as some of the other guys. So when it comes down to those intangibles, those mental skills, that mental toughness, they just don't have it. They have to learn that skill
Require that,
set.
right.
And then to the second point that you made, I wouldn't say I quite, as it relates to chess and thinking things through and planning ahead. I would say in my own life, my passion for the game of chess has helped me maybe in terms of how I conceptualize things, but I haven't quite made the connection yet for applying that knowledge in my work with athletes. But stay tuned. Stay tuned,
Okay.
because I'm always trying to think about how I can integrate it into the work that I do. So maybe the next time we talk, I'll have
Okay.
figured that out.
Well, I know I was also a basketball coach, and I know that it was a chess game to me as far as thinking ahead, knowing what they were going to do before they did it, and then making the adjustment before it needed to be made. However, I'm a lousy chess player because I don't do that playing chess. So I don't know if that makes any sense or not. Now, when you look at going to Long Beach, moving from one side of the country to pursue this, did you know you were coming back, or is like, I'm just going to go do what I can do?
Um, I wouldn't say I knew 100%, but I pretty much knew that I wanted to come back to the East Coast because my family, most of my friends are in the Northeast. So I pretty much knew that I did want to come back here. It was just a matter of when. I was out in Long Beach for 2 years for the Masters, and then I was up in San Francisco for about 6 months coaching at a big club up there, the Bay Club. So I would say I did. First of all, I had a great experience out in the West Coast. Absolutely very happy that I did it. But also, I think I did know that I wanted to return here just because this is really where my roots are, really where my family and most of my close friends are.
Okay, so you come back to the East Coast, and
Yep.
you're like, okay, I'm going to get a few jobs, and then a college job pops up. What is the difference between coaching at a club and coaching in college?
It's a great question. I would say the biggest difference is the minimum level of commitment and the minimal level of seriousness. I think if somebody has reached college sports, particularly Division I level, like Sacred Heart, you know that they have, you know that they are serious and committed to the sport. Where maybe at other levels, at a club level, there may be more question marks there, whether it's a kid that maybe their parents want them to be there, or adults where, for some adults, maybe it's more recreational and more social, where in college sports, at least in theory, that there's a certain minimum level of seriousness and commitment. I mean, the Division I time commitment is definitely a big time commitment that student athletes have between their sport, between the academics, between their social lives. So when you put it all together, it's a lot. So I would say, that's the biggest difference, really, that time commitment and that level of seriousness.
But as you're adding in the mental aspect of things, can you still apply that on both ends, or is it more for the elite or the want to be elite as opposed to the club player who's just trying to get better day or week by week?
It's a great question. I would say it really applies to everybody. It applies to professionals. It applies to the club players that are more recreational. It applies to the aspiring junior, to college players. You see things like handling pressure, right? So you see even the best players in the world, Federer, Nadal, whoever, Serena, they get tight sometimes.
Right.
So that same skill set can be applied to professionals and to college athletes and to really high level performers, but it could also be used at the club level, at the junior level, where maybe more of your competitors aren't using it compared to at the professional level where just about everybody's using it. But if at the club level, it can really be a difference maker between you and your competitors, because it's rare to be really spending the time practicing these skills at that level.
Well, somebody like, and I'm going to throw a name out there, and I don't mean to disparage him whatsoever, but someone like a Nick Kyrgios, who he's there, then he's not there. And I can use 17 other examples, so he's the one that comes to mind. That you would think as a layperson, he does this every day. How did this moment snap him? And then you realize I do the same thing. I'm up break point. I've got a chance to win a match to advance to the club tournament championship. And suddenly it hits me. I got a chance to win this thing. And the pressure gets to me. How do you, without giving away any trade secrets, how do you get people to understand it's okay?
I would say that you look at the pros, and you look at the Kyrgioses, who's, as you said, one of extremely talented player. You look at Federer when he had match point at Wimbledon finals against Djokovic in the fifth set, and didn't hit the best approach shot and got easily passed.
Right.
Was the pressure getting to him? So I think by looking at the professionals, and I think it's also important that more and more professional tennis players and other types of athletes are openly talking about the mental side of the game and working on it, where in the past it's been really stigmatized and people unfairly viewed it as, okay, if I'm talking with a psychologist, or if I'm talking with somebody that does sports psychology, then there's something wrong with me, right? But now it's starting to come to the point where people are openly talking about it. I mean, even Daniil Medvedev, right, U.S. Open finalist last year, has has somebody that does sports psychology sitting up in his box, sitting up in his coaching box during some of his matches. Other players, Bianca Andreescu talking about using visualization. So does Djokovic. So I think it's become more and more normalized and less stigmatized. The field of sports psychology, and then also seeing players of all levels, even the highest levels, struggle mentally and deal with these same things that just about every other player does, every other club player or junior player. So, yeah, I hope that sort of answered your question.
Yes, it does. It does. Thank you. Now, when you say applying this to all sports or to people in general, do you look at this and say, okay, I could take this program in preseason for a freshman soccer team and go say, I'm going to work with you, or I'm going to give you the basics? Or is it something that's a more of an individual approach that you'd have to do, or how would you work about that?
It's a great question. I would say that the basis is the same. So sort of having the same base of the mental skills of that skill set, but there are going to be differences. There are going to be things that are specific for each sport that have to be changed. I mean, just things as simple as whether it's a team sport or whether it's an individual sport. How the length of competition for a sprinter, let's say, who does 100 meters, they're going to be out there for less than 15 seconds, let's say, 12 seconds, whatever it may be, where a tennis player might be out in court for 3.5 hours,
right?
Or somewhere in between. So I would say there's a base set of skill set, that really is the same for all sports and all performances, whether it be a musician, whether it be a actor. Whenever you're performing, you're using a certain skill set that can be practiced and improved upon. But then again, in each type of performance in each sport, there are specific things that are different. So the process of working on that skill set is different for each type of sport.
Okay. Now, I know as a tennis coach, I can see someone hit 3 serves and go, I know how to fix that. But if you're watching someone, let's say again in tennis, do you look at them and say, I can see, or I can hear, or I can intuitively understand what needs to be tweaked, or is it more, has it got to be a session, or how would you go about that?
I think it depends. I think sometimes when I'm watching a match, you can pick up on things that are really obvious, frankly. If somebody's maybe having a bad day and they're yelling and swearing and screaming or throwing the racket or whatever it may be, then things like that are more to the forefront. It's easier to maybe suggest a couple routines that can be used, or breathing that can be utilized to help calm down, or self-talk for when you're in that type of state. But I would say other types of issues aren't as apparent, right? Maybe if a player is dealing with confidence, maybe if a player has a tough time focusing, whatever it may be, these sorts of issues have to actually be illuminated during a session, just because it won't come out as obviously on the court. And even if I notice it, the difference between me just noticing it and saying, okay, from what I see, it seems like you're struggling with confidence. What are most players going to say? Unless they have, the vast majority of the time they're going to say, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll get defensive. So the difference between me noticing something, or me bringing a player's attention to something, and them recognizing it and wanting to make the change, is it can be a different story. So long story short, I would say that it depends. Certain things are easier to point out and easier for players to acknowledge, where other things need to be worked through a lot more before the player is maybe ready to start really working on it.
Okay, now we use this phrase, and I don't always know if it's true or not. We use this phrase, you play how you practice. So if you see someone, again, we use Kira since we already brought him up, is and again, I don't know the behind the scenes, but if you see someone throwing rackets and having tantrums in the middle of a match, and then you watch them in a practice and they are doing that or they aren't doing that, does that make a difference
I think it
on what
definitely.
you do?
Yeah. I think it definitely makes a difference. I think I think that phrase "you play how you practice" is very true, and I think you notice, let's say at the professional levels, right? So you see someone like Nadal. Um, I'll go to the U.S. Open, and one of my favorite things about being there those first few days during the qualifying is you get to watch all the top players practicing. I
Right, right.
absolutely love that. Really up close. And if you watch, all the players are a little different, but if you watch Nadal, the way the types of huge cuts and huge swings that he takes at the ball during practice, it's like unreal. It's almost unthinkable. And then you watch other guys. Maybe it's a Nick Kyrgios. Even somebody like a Federer is much more relaxed and calm and than what you're seeing from Nadal. So I think it. Back to your question, I think it depends. I think for the most part you can pick up little things. So if you see that Nadal is very intense during his practice, and that intensity comes out during matches as well. If somebody's playing a practice set or just practicing and getting all frustrated and throwing the racket or yelling or swearing or whatever it may be,
Right.
that's gonna come out in matches as well. I think also, I think it does depend, because I think there are players who maybe like a Kyrgios who will be very chill and joking around and having fun during his practices, and then matches, it's like, this is for real now. And
Right. I
then
got
maybe he's not prepared, and then all the antics come out and the underhand serves. So, but I do think that by setting up practice conditions that will, number one, obviously tactically and physically prepare you, but also mentally prepare you for whatever challenges that you're bound to face. So maybe you're playing against a rival team at high school or college, and you know that this team likes to trash talk, right? So they like to get up close to the fence and maybe trash talk the players. Maybe you can practice that. Maybe you can set up practice conditions where you set up sort of a scrimmage between one half of the team and the other, and players are encouraged to trash talk during practice, knowing that in the match you're likely to have situations like that. Or changing up the practice scoring. So there are these dice breakers that you can play during practice, where you take dice to help you handle adversity, to help you handle these uncomfortable, unknown conditions. Where if you and I are playing, we'll each roll a die, whatever number it starts with. Maybe I get a 2 and you get a 5. We start the tiebreak at that score.
Yeah.
Then you just play it out from there. Then maybe you start again. So by setting up practice conditions to make things a little tougher, to make things challenging, can help it, so that once you're in that situation in a match, you've been through it before, right? So it's the opposite of maybe that player who doesn't practice so hard, and then they get into the match, and then it's like, I've got a tough situation on my hands that I'm not ready for because I haven't practiced it, compared to trying to set up practice in a way where you simulate that type of environment that you're likely to get into.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned visualization, and I don't know if this qualifies, but I think that maybe I did it without knowing it. Say I'm serving to the ad court, and I'm thinking kick serve to the backhand. I know it's going to come, and if I hit my spot, I know it's coming back. So I think before I step up the line and I say, now if I do this, this is what should happen. Is that a visualization thing, or is that more just I've played enough to have an idea?
I would say, to me, it sounds like a visualization type of thing. To me, it sounds like you're almost replaying it in your head that, this is the type of serve I want to hit. Maybe you're not consciously trying to say, okay, I want to, I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to reach back. I'm going to use my legs in the serve, and I'm going to, get the ball out wide to the ad side so that they have to hit the backhand. Maybe you're just, maybe it all goes in a fraction of a second. You just think, okay, ad side, I'm up 40-30, let's say. I want to, this player's got a weaker backhand. I'm going to kick the ball out to their backhand side. So maybe it's not as intentional, but I still would say it's a type of visualization or imagery. I think what can be, I really think visualization and imagery can be used between points, as what you were saying, can be used during a changeover. If you have to turn things around, it can be used before a match. And I think for each player, it really depends what works. Some players, they find that by getting all of the senses involved, so by trying to really think about what they'll be seeing, what they'll be hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, that can really make the visualization as vivid as possible. But when there's a time constraint and you have 15 or 20 seconds between the point, one of the best things you can do is what you said, right? Think about, okay, I'm going to hit this kick serve out wide to try to set myself up. I think one of the directions tennis is really going in is through Craig O'Shaughnessy. Really, I think he's done a lot of work here by working with Djokovic and other players. But really, it comes down to those first 4 shots of the match of the point. It's the serve, it's the return, the serve plus one, the return plus one. So if you can visualize and practice those first 2 shots that you hit, whether it's on the serving side or on the returning side. So maybe it's, okay, I want to hit this kick serve out wide, and I want to set up my forehand.
Right.
So maybe it's either just visualizing or trying to strategize that first shot, or maybe even those first 2 shots, just to really set yourself up.
And this is kind of where my mind, the chess thing comes in. If I make my play, I know what play he has to make. Therefore, I'm already ready for it before I have to make it. And then I make the play after that because I know what I can get. And then, like I said, the first 4 shots, now I know what I'm giving him. Point should be over by then. But if it's not, then I play out the point.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, it's a great point. I mean, whether in tennis, you're always trying to set yourself up, and you're always trying to limit your opponent's options, right? So if you're if you hit that kick serve out wide, you know that they're probably going to go cross court with that backhand, right? If they go down the line, then they're going into your forehand, assuming you're a righty. So as you said, and I think you said it better than I could, just like chess, when you're strategizing or when you're visualizing even for the point to come, trying to not just, think that first move or that first shot, but trying to think 1 or 2 or 3 or however many shots ahead can really help to set up the point in a constructive way to give you the best possible chance.
Okay, now you made me think of a couple other things, and I'll try to do it one part at a time. When is the best time in a season or in a relationship to get involved with someone in the mental aspect of things? Do you wait until you see a crack or a chink in the armor, or is it, hey, I'm going to start with this kid or this player right now, and we're going to try and avoid there being a chink in the armor?
It's a great question. I would say, first of all, there's no wrong time. So I think for some people it might work, hey, I have a big competition coming up. I want to be at my best, next week for that competition. But in general, I would say that it's better to be proactive and better to start working on these things so that you have the skills in place before it becomes an issue, right? So you can either start maybe a little bit younger, or maybe in the preseason, to try to get everything in place so that once you start competing and maybe the cracks show, you already have the skill set in place. You already have that sort of armor to help protect you, rather than waiting until you have a breakdown or waiting until you have a really bad performance and then you say, okay, now I need help. So trying to be proactive, I think, is a better approach, but I would also say there's no wrong time. So, if maybe you've had a performance and that is what really made you notice, hey, I really need this stuff. I've heard about it for a while, but maybe this can actually help me. So some people, it takes an experience like that, but in general, if you can be proactive, you set yourself up better for success.
Okay, and you actually started to answer the other question. Is there a particular age or experience level, or is it just, hey, I'm thinking I'm going to get serious about tennis or golf or whatever. I'm going to take this as same thing as getting stroke reduction and all that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any particular age or experience level or anything like that. I think as soon as a player is ready to take their performance seriously, so that means something different for each person, right? So that might
Right.
mean playing professional, that might mean playing in a tournament, whatever that means. But when somebody takes their performance seriously, whatever age they are, whatever level they are, then I think that mental skills training or sports psychology coaching could be helpful for them.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being here. If you would, give us some ideas of how we can get in touch with you, or at least follow what you're doing.
Yeah, well, this was a lot of fun. I can be reached on my website at tiebreakerpsych.com. All social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, it's just at tiebreakerpsych.
Okay.
And you can reach me via email, josh@tiebreakerpsych, and even by phone at 203-814-0342. I do a free first session. If anyone's interested in just getting started or trying it out, you can fill out the form on my website just to get started, and then we can set up that first session.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now, I do have one last thing I would ask you. This is more of a, as we're dealing with what we're dealing with. Do you have any idea when the directives, as far as when college is going to, what's going to happen with the last college season and the next college season? Does anyone really communicate that, or just kind of whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wish I had more answers, honestly. As of right now, things are scheduled to start in the fall. As of right now, that's all I can really say. I know that the NCAA has granted an extra year of eligibility for spring sport athletes, which is a big deal. But as far as universities opening up, as far as sports starting as scheduled, it's unclear right now, honestly. So I wish I could give you more answers, honestly.
No,
I wish I had more answers.
Well, now, how does that play out when you've got a guy who's a senior? Let's just say it was, or three guys that were seniors. Got a strong senior class, and you've recruited behind them to fill their spots. What do we do now? I mean, it's nice to have that option of, I have three returning guys who were pretty good, but now I've got a logjam. Does there been any consideration of what you do from there, or is that we'll figure it out as we figure it out?
Yeah. It's a tough situation. I think it's a situation that coaches and players will be dealing with over this next year. Just that, a lot of players, they had maybe their senior year taken away last year, or this past year with everything going on. So they say, okay, I want to come back. I have an extra year of eligibility. I want to come back. But then maybe the team now has, 3 or 4, however many additional players on their roster, and there's still the same number of starting spots. There's still the same scholarship funds. So it's a tough situation. It really is. I wish I had more answers, but it's a situation that
everyone's
athletic departments and teams around the country are dealing with. And hopefully things get better soon, so that we can get back on court again, and seasons could start as scheduled. But yeah, I don't have all the answers, unfortunately.
Well, as I told you off the air, I just spoke with the gentleman who runs the National Tennis Center in New York, and it's a hospital right now. So there's no tennis being played there, and they're working on it. And he said, well, whenever we get back on the courts, we'll be ready to go. But it's a hospital now. So, that tells you where we're at. So, the question I'm asking everybody, it's not that this is what we're driving towards, but this is a part of the thing. Now, and as far as what you're talking about, now you have people as far as, how do I get myself ready to play if it's accelerating, like we're playing next week or we're playing next month, where I used to have an entire off season an entire training season to work with that. Again, that's going to play more into the mental aspect, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really tough for athletes right now, especially because many of them don't know when they're going to be able to be on the court again. I mean, at the professional level, I know there's at least no ATP, WTA tournaments until mid-July. Colleges, they expect to be back in the fall, but nobody knows for sure. A lot of courts are closed. A lot of gyms are closed.
Okay.
So it's tough in terms of the facilities around us, and then also the uncertainty of it all. So it's also you can't get together and train with people like you normally could. So there's all these additional challenges, and there's all these additional stressors in people's lives, which is why another reason why mental skills and sports psychology is so important right now to deal with those that additional stress that individuals are under.
And as athletes, we are creatures of habit, and our habits have been just decimated. So I think what you do is even going to be even more important in the near future. So.
Yeah, exactly. Our habits, our routines have been totally, as you said, totally decimated. I think what's important is building some healthy habits and routines right now, whether it be just literally waking up at the same time, exercising, maybe meditating, building some good some good routines, setting some goals right now that can help to actually carry over once things return to normal, or whatever normal looks like. But building some routines and some healthy habits right now that can help you for once you get back on court. Knowing that other people maybe aren't doing those same things, so maybe trying to get a extra step on the competition right now.
Well, so what we're looking at is a lot of people are without jobs, and we've created job security for you. How about
that? It's one way of looking at it.
Yeah. Always have to try and find the silver lining.
Absolutely. I mean, I think as you said, that it's definitely an area that is needed, right? So many athletes right there are struggling. They don't know what's next. They don't know when they're going to be able to be on court again. They have doubts. I mean, think about a high school player, right, that wants to play college sports, and they want to appeal to college coaches, but they can't compete,
right?
And they can't practice. So
this was a season I had a senior who had a pretty decent junior year, but he had a phenomenal senior year. Well, he wouldn't have had that.
Right.
Yeah. So, and you wouldn't be able to show anyone what to do. Okay. Well, Josh, again, I appreciate your time. Like you said, when we'll talk again, we'll incorporate the chess aspect into things later on down the road. I wish you well, and I hope you stay safe.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Really appreciate you having me on. And stay safe, stay healthy out there.
Thank you, sir.